You're watching Showroom 18 and this is our comparison video of the Sony Xperia E5 versus the Xperia E4. We will look at pros and cons of each device to help you work out which is better suited to you. In this video, the E5 is running Android 6 and the E4 is running Android 4.4.4. Both phones have a 5-inch screen. The E5 has a resolution of 720 by 1280 with a pixel density of 294. While the E4 has a resolution of 540 by 960 and a pixel density of 229. Both phones have the notification light and front-facing camera at the top, but the other way around. The same applies to the 3.5mm jack port on the top. The power button and volume keys on the right are in the same places but flipped. Then on the back, the E4's camera is at the top center and the E5's is over to the top left. What is different is the E4 has a speaker on the back, the micro USB slot on the left, and you have to remove the backing to add your SIM and SD card. With the E5, the speaker is on the bottom next to the USB slot, and you can add the nano SIM and SD card on the left. The battery cannot be removed on the E5 either. Both phones have a 1.3 GHz quad-core processor. The difference is the E5 is using a Cortex A53 GPU with a MediaTek MT6735 chipset with 1.5 GB of RAM, while the E4 is using a Cortex A7 GPU with a MediaTek MT6582 chipset and 1 GB of RAM. The E5 has 16 GB of internal storage and up to 256 GB of external storage via a micro SD card. The E4 has 8 GB of internal storage with 32 GB of external storage, also through a micro SD card. From first using the phones, the E4 had 4.78 GB available to the user and the E5 was around 9 GB. Looking at the connectivity features, both devices have Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, FM radio, while the E5 has NFC. With the sensors, both phones have a proximity sensor, accelerometer. The E5 also has a compass. Turning both phones on at the same time, the E4 loads up to the main screen a few seconds faster than the E5. The E5 on the other hand has a better looking screen and faster touch response. The E5 will load up applications faster than the E4, and playing the same games will also get to the main menu quicker. Since at this point the E4 is running an older version of Android, it was not compatible with testing the slingshot test in the 3D benchmark. Instead, we will look at both phones testing out Ice Storm Extreme. The E5 loaded up and finished the test first with a higher score of 5098 compared to the E4, which got 3240. The only subsection of the test where the E4 got higher was with the physics test of 25.6 frames per second compared to the E5's 19.6 frames per second. The E4 has a 5 megapixel camera with a 2 megapixel front camera, and the E5 has a 13 megapixel camera with a 5 megapixel front facing one. The E4 has camera applications made by Sony and third-party companies for fun effects. They have taken this feature away with the E5. After spending some time taking photos at the same time on both phones, the Xperia E5 does have better shots. The issue is, which I mentioned in the E5 standalone review, it is not always consistent, resulting in blurry images and exposure issues. The Xperia E4, while the white balance is not as good as the E5, it takes longer to take the photos and starting up video recording. However, it was not coming out with overexposed shots or out of focus shots as often as the E5. The front-facing camera, on the other hand, is much better on the E5 in both photo and video mode. Now let's take a look at the video quality. This is the sound quality of the Xperia E4, and this is the sound quality of the Xperia E5. This is the quality of the front-facing cameras. The Xperia E5 does not feel like an upgrade or a follow-up to the E4, it is more like a follow-up to the E3 in terms of design and feel, while the E4's design is closer to the E1. The pros of the E5 in comparison is it runs applications smoother, there is a better front-facing camera, there's NFC, a better looking display, around 5GB more internal space to start with, and is running a newer version of Android. The other pro, which can be seen as a negative depending on preference, is the design is closer to the premium Sony phones and is not as chunky looking. Looking at the pros of the E4, the screen may not be its best feature, but this plays a part in why the battery lasts longer on the E4 in comparison. You should be able to pick up the E4 at a lower price than the E5 with it being released a year before. The performance difference is not too far apart. The last positive point, which again is down to preference, is the phone is thicker with a bit more width on the screen for people with bigger hands and has more Sony applications pre-installed and integration in things like the camera. We hope this video has helped you see the pros and cons of each device to work out which phone is more suited for you. If you want to watch more in the individual reviews, there is further information on each product, such as what is on the phone and my personal experience with the devices. The links for the videos are in the description, or you can click on the annotation.